Hi there, poetry lovers, poetry curious, poetry haters who want to hate on what I'm going to read. I'm Mike. I work at the Saskatoon Public Library. We're here today at Chappell Marsh for Poetry Corner. I've got some beautiful poetry by Edward Thomas to read to you today. Now, it can be hard to find older poets in our collection, so you know what? When it's difficult to find one, sometimes a collection, an anthology is your best bet. And we've got a number of those that you can request and hold on to. So enjoy Treaty 6 territory, traditional homeland of the Métis, the most beautiful place in the world. That's where I am today. And let's go take a look around. As I was thinking about this new program and coming to fall in love newly with birds, I'm becoming a birder. By the way, you can check out a birding backpack as one of our exciting kits from the library. It comes with binoculars and a backpack and I think a bird identification book or card. As I was doing that new thing, I thought about old poetry. And I was reading through this, and you know what? It doesn't feel very old. The language is weird. But when you dig into the themes and the images and the important issues that Edward Thomas was dealing with before his death in 1917, they're universal themes. There was a war that he was in, and he was watching nature be destroyed. And he was deeply touched by nature and by relationships. I think that's things that we can really connect with today. So I'm going to read you a few of these as we move around Chappell Marsh on the southwest side of Saskatoon. We're right across the street from a dog park, and there's a lovely walk. Depending on your speed, you could be here for half an hour, 2 hours, and there are a ton of birds already here in early May, and I'm sure it's only going to get more as the season goes on. So I'm going to read you the first poem I thought of in this book. Edward Thomas has lots of birds and nature in his poetry, but it's not just a love song to nature. There's always a deeper idea behind it. So I'm going to read you Sedge Warblers, which hint, there's clearly birds in it. I can hear some now in the background. But there's more to it. What do the sedge warblers know that we don't know? Is there a way for us to come to know it? What are we missing in our lives? Sedge warblers. This beauty made me dream there was a time long past and irrevocable, a clime where any brook so radiant racing clear through buttercup and kingcup bright as brass, but gentle, nourishing the meadow grass that leans and scurries in the wind, would bear another beauty, divine and feminine, child to the sun, a nymph whose soul unstained could love all day and never hate or tire, a lover of mortal or immortal kin. And yet rid of this dream, ere I had drained its poison, quieted was my desire, so that I only looked into the water, clearer than any goddess or man's daughter, and hearkened while it combed the dark green hair and shook the millions of blossoms white, of water crow foot, and curdled to one sheet the flowers fallen from the chestnuts in the park, far off. And sedge warblers, clinging so light to willow twigs, sang longer than the lark, quick, shrill, or grating, a song to match the heat of the strong sun, nor less the waters cool, gushing through narrows, swirling in the pool. Their song, that lacks all words, all melody, all sweetness almost, was dearer to me than the sweetest voice that sings in tune sweet words. This was the best of May, the small brown birds wisely reiterating endlessly what no man learnt yet, in or out of school. what no one learned yet in or out of school. Well, let's go see a different part of the marsh. Okay, so here we are, down by the water. It's a little more windy, so please forgive the wind noise. I'm wearing my best filter, but you know, you're going to hear a little bit of nature with this poem. And in the background, if you're lucky, and I know it's pretty small back there, but there are sandpipers along the shore, there are Canada geese, there are blue teal-winged ducks, there are green teal-winged ducks, there are buffleheads, there are mallards. There's a whole host of things, and you'll hear some of them calling maybe if we're lucky. And while we're doing that, I'm going to read The Unknown Bird, which isn't any of those ones I mentioned. And as in our last piece, maybe is less about the bird and more about the human who is thinking about the bird. I mentioned sometimes that Edward Thomas, in a lot of ways, is struggling with the same things that we are today. One of the things that you hear at workshops or out on the street, or if you have young children, such as I do, you hear, check your privilege. I'm going to read you a poem, ostensibly about an owl. The Owl. Downhill I came, hungry and yet not starved, cold yet had heat within me that was proof against the north wind, tired, yet so that rest had seemed the sweetest thing under a roof. Then at the inn I had food, fire, and rest, knowing how hungry, cold, and tired was I. All of the night was quite barred out, except an owl's cry, a most melancholy cry. Shaken out long and clear upon the hill, no merry note nor cause of merriment, but one telling me plain what I escaped, and others could not. That night, as in I went. And salted was my food, and my repose, salted and sobered too by the bird's voice, speaking for all who lay under the stars, soldiers and poor, unable to rejoice. Edward Thomas is known as a war poet as well as a nature poet, and you can see the two combined in that wonderful poem that reminds us to always think about how lucky we are. And maybe he doesn't take the step of what can we do for those who are less fortunate, but he's clearly wrestling with that idea. The Unknown Bird by Edward Thomas. 3 lovely notes he whistled, too soft to be heard if others sang, but others never sang in the great beech wood all that May and June. No one saw him. I alone could hear him, though many listened. Was it but 4 years ago, or 5? He never came again. Oftenest when I heard him I was alone, nor could I ever make another hear. La, la, la. He called, seeming far off, as if a cock crowed past the edge of the world, as if the bird or I were in a dream. Yet that he traveled through the trees and sometimes neared me was plain, though somehow distant still he sounded. All the proof is, I told men what I had heard. I never knew a voice, man, beast, or bird, better than this. I told the naturalists, but neither had they heard anything like the notes that did so haunt me. I had them clear by heart, and have them still. 4 years, or 5, have made no difference. Then as now, that la, la, la was bodiless sweet. Sad more than joyful it was, if I must say that it was one or the other. But if sad, 'twas only sad with joy too far off for me to taste it. But I cannot tell if truly never anything but fair the days were when he sang, as now they seem, this surely I know, that I who listened then, happy sometimes, sometimes suffering a heavy body and a heavy heart, now straightway, if I think of it, become light as that bird, wandering beyond my shore. Standing here, listening to the birds surround me, known and unknown, I too, I think, feel light as that bird wandering beyond my shore. It's probably all the time we have for Edward Thomas's poetry. If maybe we can squeeze one more in, I'll take us somewhere else in the park. We'll sneak it in. I don't think they'll mind. All right, hang tough. The Coombe. The Coombe was ever dark, ancient and dark. Its mouth is stopped with bramble, thorn, and briar, and no one scrambles over the sliding chalk by beech and yew and perishing juniper, down the half-precipices of its sides, with roots and rabbit-holes for steps. The sun of winter, the moon of summer, and all the singing birds, except the missel thrush that loves juniper, are quite shut out. But far more ancient and dark the Coombe looks since they killed the badger there, dug him out, and gave him to the hounds, that most ancient Briton of English beasts. I want to read you a long piece right now. It's called The Other, and I want you to think about who you've been during the pandemic, your worst self and your best self. Which of those is really you? You'll tell yourself one, but are you sure it's not the other? The forest ended. Glad I was to feel the light and hear the hum of bees and smell the drying grass and the sweet mint, because I had come to an end of forest, and because here was both road and inn the sum of what's not forest. But 'twas here they asked me if I did not pass yesterday this way. Not you? Queer. Who then? And slept here? I felt fear. I learnt his road, and ere they were sure I was I, left the dark wood. Behind kestrel and woodpecker, the inn in the sun, the happy mood, when first I tasted sunlight there, I travelled fast in hopes I should outrun that other. What to do when caught? I planned not. I pursued to prove the likeness, and if true, to watch until myself I knew. I tried the inns that evening, of a long gabled high street grey, of courts and outskirts, travelling an eager but weary way, in vain. He was not there. Nothing told me that ever till that day had one like me entered those doors, save once, that time I dared, you may recall. But never foamless shores make better friends than those dull bores. Many and many a day like this aimed at the unseen moving goal, and nothing found but remedies for all desire. These made not whole. They sowed a new desire. To kiss desire's self beyond control, desire of desire. And yet, life stayed on within my soul. One night, in sheltering from the wet, I quite forgot I could forget. A customer, then the landlady, stared at me with a kind of smile. They hesitated awkwardly. Their silence gave me time for guile. Had anyone called there like me? I asked. It was quite plain the wile succeeded, for they poured out all, and that was not. Less than a mile beyond the inn, I could recall, he was like me in general. He had pleased them, but I less. I was more eager than before to find him out, and to confess to bore him and let him bore. I could not wait. Children might guess I had a purpose, something more that made an answer indiscreet. One girl's caution made me sore, too indignant, even to greet that other had we chanced to meet. I sought then in solitude. The wind had fallen with the night, as still the roads lay as the ploughed land rude, dark and naked on the hill. Had there been ever any feud twixt earth and sky? A mighty will closed it. The crocketed dark trees, a dark house impossible, cloud towers, one star, one lamp, one peace, held on an everlasting lease. And all was earth's, or all was sky's. No difference endured between the two. A dog barked on a hidden rise, a marsh bird whistled high unseen. The latest waking blackbird's cries perished upon the silence keen. The last light filled a narrow firth among the clouds. I stood serene, and with a solemn quiet mirth, an old inhabitant of earth. Once the name I gave to hours like this was melancholy, when it was not happiness and powers coming like exiles home again, and weakness quitting their bowers, smiled and enjoyed far off from men moments of everlastingness. And fortunate my search was then, while what I sought nevertheless, that I was seeking I did not guess. That time was brief. Once more at inn and upon road I sought my man, till once amid a taproom's din loudly he asked for me, began to speak as if it had been a sin of how I thought and dreamed and ran after him thus day after day. He lived as one under a ban. For this, what had I got to say? I said nothing. I slipped away. And now I dare not follow after too close. I try to keep in sight, dreading his frown and worse, his laughter. I steal out of the wood to light, to see the swift shoot from the rafter by the inn door ere I light. I wait, and hear the starlings wheeze and nibble like ducks. I wait his flight. He goes. I follow. No release. Until he ceases. Then, too, I also shall cease. Thanks for reading some Edward Thomas with me out here at Chapel Marsh. I'm Mike. Have a great day.